case you haven't figured it out yet, that the United States is a bribe. And what I mean is, what is it a bribe against? It's a bribe against slavery across the entire world. The U.S. represents colonialism, it represents individualism, it represents white supremacy, everything wrong with this world, the United States represents. And there's no coincidence that the U.S. world order was a continuation of European colonialism, where white countries can steal from black and brown people all throughout the world. Hey, like I said, the United States world order was a continuation of 500 years of European colonialism. And those 500 years of European colonialism are coming to an end, and white people haven't had the courage to have discussions with their communities. They don't talk to us about it because it frightens them. And I've always said that many white people thought that change was a choice. It's coming regardless. You want to know why? Because you're a minority. You're not the majority in the world. You're not the majority opinion in the world.
So the question was, out of the entire world's population, what percentage is white? There are people who said 60, 80. Somebody even said 90. Do you know what the real answer is? It's 7%. 7%. That means they don't even have the numbers to keep up white supremacy. What that means is either we're letting them keep it up or we're actively helping them keep it up, because they don't have the manpower to do it by themselves. What if we all collectively said, I don't want to be in a place or support the ideas of white supremacy? It would be over. There's too many of us versus them. It would be over. This is such a game changer for me. This is like the moment where I heard the word colonizer. Or even when I saw how they treated Barack Obama and Michelle Obama. 7%? They're only there because we keep them there. That's crazy!
What percent of the world's population is white?
63. 42.
51.
70.
40.
30 or 20?
70.
80.
24%.
70.
20, 30?
43.
24.
20. 30.
80%.
Zero.
What if I told you it was 7%?
7%?
Only 7?
7%.
Only 7%?
Yeah.
No
The
way.
whole world.
Your white people are like top of the world.
7%.
7? What?
7 to 8% is what?
Hang on. That's not true.
It's true.
No, it's not.
It's below 10%.
Nah, that's bull.
Yeah.
Wait.
It's 7.
Shit. And I'm about to be a teacher. Don't learn from me, brother.
Taking the piece, bro.
No, it's a real... It's below 10%. Some estimates put it 7 to 8%.
What's this TikTok? I'll share.
Ozpill. Yeah, Ozpill. Yeah.
Wait, post me, yeah?
Yeah, you'll see.
As a boy growing up, I loved James Bond movies. I remember watching them and wondering, how come there are no black spies? And I would tell myself, well, maybe black people are too few. They would stand out in a crowd. But here's the twist. White people only make up about 7% of the world's population. Did you know that? Let that sink in. They look like they're everywhere, right? No, they only make up 7% of the world's population. So why does it feel like they're the majority? Why do movies, TV shows, magazines, and even the way we draw maps make it seem like they take up most of the world? I'll tell you why. Because they've mastered the narrative. Think about it. From Young and the Restless to Friends to Gilmore Girls, the casts were always 90% white. You'd occasionally get a black or Asian character, usually a sidekick, or someone who gets killed off quick. It was always subtle, but constant. And every story said, this is who matters. Even the maps lied to us. They were designed to make the Western world look bigger than it actually is. For example, here's a fact. America is the same size as the Sahara Desert. Yes, it is. But they made it look like it was bigger than the whole of Africa. Nigeria alone has 220 million people. That's 3/4 of the US population in just one African country. So what does that tell us? That the person who controls the story controls the perception. controls the mirror you look into. And this is the most important part. Controls how the world sees you, and worse, how you see yourself. The person who owns the pen writes the history. The person who controls the lens shapes the image, including your image. And the person who designs the map shapes the power. So before I go, you are not small. You are not the side character. You are not the exception. You are not the footnote in someone else's book. At least not anymore. We can see what they're doing. You are the author. They just gave you a blank page and a borrowed pen. Now go take it back. And remember, write it in your own language. Let's move.
So as we transition out of a settler government into like indigenous governance, we should understand that how Americans have legalized their violence through the courtrooms, whether it's against like marginalized communities, black and brown people, indigenous people, and we should take notes. So as we transition and we establish our own courtrooms and our own judicial system, we should criminalize obviously racism, anti-blackness, anti-indigenousness, and it should be up to indigenous nations of that area whether they're gonna re-educate settlers or straight up just deportations. To be honest with you, everything should be on the table. Because if we do not take care of our business, then we're going to, like, indigenous people on the North American continent are going to deal with what you're seeing in South Africa. How technically indigenous Africans have like the laws and the judicial system and shit like that, but obviously the white minorities, the Afrikaners, whatever the fuck you want to call them, have the money and have like the power still. It's kind of ridiculous. And same thing with New Zealand. So yeah, I personally feel like a lot of people always ask me what's going to happen to white people. I mean, that's going to be up to indigenous nations, like of that area, whether they want to re-educate them, deport them. I mean, I think for me personally, I think the easiest transition is white people becoming citizens on the North American continent under indigenous leadership. However, we do need to understand that there are people that are problems, and unless white people are doing the work in their communities to fix those problems, it's going to be up to us, and people are going to get all mad on how we respond. But I mean, that's just the truth. Like, how are we going to transition out? And people ask me, how long is it going to take on this transitionary period? That's up to you. Are you going to drag your feet, or are you going to do your part?
With the genocide in Gaza, the proxy war in Sudan, and the unilateral sanctions against Iran, Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba, and the continued destabilization of Haiti and Congo, we have seen that the international mainstream media landscape is gripped by a singular and suffocating narrative.
Through relentless censorship and algorithmic suppression, the Western ruling elite buries truth beneath a flood of misinformation, distraction, and imperial spin to maintain their hegemonic control of the planet.
But today, that changes.
We proudly announced the launch of Sovereign Media, an anti-imperialist media coalition uniting vital platforms, including Chow Collective, Black Agenda Report, Calcetchen News, NAM, Orinoco Tribune, and more.
Our mission is urgent and unapologetic.
To arm the oppressed with media power.
To challenge the lies of imperialism.
To amplify the stories of those in the resistance, from Gaza to Caracas, from Nairobi to New York.
We are anti-imperialist, socialist, living in an all-out information war. This war is waged by Western states and their corporate media mouthpieces to sanitize aggression and genocide, to normalize settler colonial occupation, and to justify the ongoing subjugation of the global south.
And, as Malcolm X once warned us, if you're not careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing.
In this climate, journalism is no longer neutral terrain. It is a weapon, and we intend to wield it in the service of liberation.
Sovereign media is not merely a reaction to censorship or media bias. It is a proactive formation, rooted in solidarity, justice, and internationalism.
We're committed to building a media infrastructure that empowers those most impacted by imperialist violence to speak for themselves.
Our task is clear.
To train and support comrades embedded in movements for self-determination.
To expose the mechanics of empire through rigorous fact-based reporting.
And to create an international dialogue anchored in revolutionary truth, where the voices of the global South are no longer ignored.
We believe that the most authentic journalism comes from the front lines, reported by those struggling daily against imperialism.
The streets of occupied and subjugated nations.
The forests resisting extraction.
The hospitals bombed by drone strikes.
And the barricades of popular struggle.
Sovereign media will be a place of these perspectives, a hub of resistance, a platform of purpose.
As Palestinian revolutionary and poet Hassan Kanafani once said, imperialism has laid its whole body across the world. Its head in Eastern Asia, its heart in the Middle East, its arteries reaching Africa y America Latina. Wherever you strike it and damage it, you serve the world revolution.
We are here to strike.
So, when the United States is telling you that that you guys are the strongest country in the world and that you're the best country in the world, that's for domestic consumption. As far as like the world outside of the white world, no one is listening to you anymore. No, you're literally committing genocide, and no one gives a shit about what you say anymore. And the reason why you can't seem to grasp that is because you dehumanize brown people to the point where they can be killed. And you don't care because it's not you. So why do you think a lot of white people got very upset about Charlie Kirk, regardless if they affiliated with him or not? Because Charlie Kirk is most likely a moderate in Republican circles or conservative circles. So, and that's saying something, guys. And when Charlie Kirk died, a lot of white people saw and said, oh my God, that could be my brother, that could be my uncle, that could be my cousin, that could be my husband. So to them, that hit home. Because it was the first, like for some people, it was the first time that it could be them. And obviously, this is why white people are getting very violent with black and brown people, indigenous people, and using the state to cover up their bullshit and voting for it, etc. Like it's one thing to believe in the system, but it's another to actively vote for like something that will happen. Like I mean, they know what they're doing, guys, and we have to stop thinking like that white people don't know what they're doing. This is a conscious decision. People are consciously making these decisions. It's like failing an open book test. When people show you who they are, believe them. And obviously the United States didn't prepare their people for the moments that are coming. The global South breaking away from the Western economies, the Western financial system crisis that's coming, that's not getting a bailout. Something you guys need to understand, that you're not getting a bailout this time. You should have collapsed in 2008. But China bailed you out. And now a lot of people are thinking, oh, China wants to take over the world. No. How most countries want to influence their shit is probably through soft power and trade. Because wasting resources on military interventions, it's a waste of time. And China understands that being the reserve currency ends your country. It will end the British. It ended the British Empire. It's going to end the American Empire. So most people are realizing, in my opinion, that like China specifically is a lot smarter than us. They are long-term thinkers. We think every 2 to 4 years. And if every election is a threat to democracy, you're already in failed territory, guys. You've been in failed territory for a while.
First provide a preface, a historical and global preface, so we'll understand the profundity of the moment that's now facing us. That is to say, how did we arrive at this new era that we're entering? The era of U.S. hegemony, unipolarity, commencing roughly in 1991 with the collapse of the Soviet Union, is now in the process of being supplanted by multipolarity, not only with the rise of the People's Republic of China, which we'll talk about momentarily, but also its comrades in the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and the other partners, Egypt, Ethiopia, association with Cuba, United Arab Emirates, Iran, Indonesia just co-opted, etc. And so we're in a very different moment right now. And it signals also a deepening crisis for U.S. imperialism. And I think that that's the way that you should seek to understand this unhinged press conference Mr. Trump gave yesterday with these threats against Canada, against Denmark, against Panama, earlier threats towards Britain and the European Union, that is to say, unless they buy more energy and more arms from the U.S. military-industrial complex, they will be subject to tariffs, taxes on their exports to the U.S. market. In other words, they will be contributing to the U.S. Treasury so that Mr. Trump can cut taxes on his billionaire donors. And what's quite remarkable about this moment is that I think Canada in particular is wholly unprepared for what it's about to face. I've been monitoring Canadian media, and I don't think that they realize what's going on. And of course, as we've mentioned more than once in recent weeks, the fact that they have complicated, if not negative, relations with China, India, and Russia simultaneously does not necessarily place them in a positive light right now. Now, in order to understand how we got to this moment, obviously I could start with my book on the 16th century, but in the interest of time, let's start with the Haitian Revolution concluding in 1804, which ignited a general crisis of the entire slave system that could only be resolved with its collapse. That was followed in 1917 by the Russian Revolution, which involved the general crisis of the capitalist system. And some of us would argue that that crisis also can only be resolved with its collapse. Certainly it signals a deepening crisis that was then heightened in 1949 when Moscow helped the comrades in China into power with the Chinese Revolution. The United States was under so much pressure during that period. And in the 1950s, remarkably, they decided to ease the more horrible and egregious aspects of U.S. apartheid and Jim Crow so that they could better present their visage to the decolonizing world and appeal to nations emerging in Africa and the Caribbean in particular. But of course, in the early 1970s, as we've also discussed, there was the entente between U.S. imperialism and China, not least U.S. imperialism playing on the tensions and contradictions between China and the Soviet Union, eventuating in the Soviet Union's collapse in 1991. And the United States, as their propagandists were then exhorting, was the sole remaining superpower. We had entered the end of history. Capitalism was the only alternative in terms of economic development. There are many points where you can mark the end of that previous period. But for the sake of our discussion today, let's mark it in October 2024 with the BRICS summit in Russia, the Kazan Declaration, which is worthy of perusal, not least because it outlines an entire blueprint about the new order that should be emerging and that is in the process of emerging. And we see that.
So obviously, like, the people that are going to survive this collapse, because you're living through it, whether you want to like accept it or not, that's not my problem. But the people who are going to live through this collapse are going to be people who can adapt, who are open to like new ideas and understand that the world that is coming is not going to be materialistic. It's not going to be about having, quote unquote, the nicest things all the time. It's about having like the essential things like food, housing, shelter, water, and a community. And obviously, people in America are being taught to be consumers. Look at Valentine's Day. Christmas is about buying people presents and shit. It's crazy. But people are going to have to live without materialistic things and start learning how to build communities and obviously organization, new styles of governance, and like sharing resources evenly, because obviously during a collapse, if you want to keep crime down or keep people from looting, they have to be given like the things they need to survive. Also going to be pounding on your door. And I've always said, you can be prepared, but is your neighborhood prepared? And we're all in this together. Whether you agree with white supremacy, whether you're not, you're still going down with it. And we didn't do enough, in my opinion, on the North American continent to change this world. And unfortunately, we're going to be living through that. So we're going to have to change whether you want to or not.
I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret about white people. Every single white person knows somebody who is racist. Racist towards black people, racist towards Spanish people. We all know somebody. It might be our family member, it might be a distant relative, it might be a coworker, it might be an old friend, but we all know somebody. Personally, I come from a whole family of racist people. Yeah, my entire family is Republican too. Okay? My dad's parents are racist, and my mom's parents are racist. Okay? So I'm literally going against everything by talking about this. I am putting my own life on the line by speaking about this, and that's what we all should be doing. See, we could have ended this a long time ago, but people like my mom listened to these racist comments that their parents were making and didn't speak out against it. They kept their mouths shut, or they agreed with them silently, you know? But they didn't do anything about it. They continue to let this be passed on generation after generation. So if you are against racism and you are against discrimination and you're a white person, you need to speak out about it. Otherwise, you are allowing this to continue generation after generation, and you are just as much a part of the problem as anybody else.
So white America has a very like child view of the world, where the U.S. military and their government is out there saving the world from black and brown dictators. And obviously this is like a white savior complex where they know what's best than anybody. And obviously like there are people that look like us that adopt these values. But obviously we know that typically young white males are the ones that adopt these values because obviously the U.S. lies to their citizens about why they go to war. But there's still a lot of white men that truly believe that the U.S. is a good country. Honestly, there are old people that never even grow out of it. Like, bro, if you truly, if you're past 30 years old and you think that the U.S. is saving the world from black and brown dictators, that is embarrassing. But this is what we have to deal with and we have to understand. And as the world transitions out of the U.S. world order, a lot of these white men are going to lash out because they bought this worldview. So as like this, as like our reality ends, they're going to lash out. They're going to do like domestic terrorism. You already see it. I wouldn't be shocked if they start killing folks that just for not being right enough. So we have to understand. And we can't underestimate the strength of the right wing in America because this is a right wing country, liberals and conservatives alike. And a lot of crazy motherfuckers are in the police forces, they're in the government, and they're in the military. So a lot of them have adopted this worldview that no one tells them what to do. This is their world. Like this is a white world. So obviously, as the U.S. world order ends, I'm just going to say it. A lot of white people don't suffer well. They can't handle it. Some people have never missed a meal. Some people have never struggled. I'm not saying like it hasn't happened for like obviously families, but there's some people that have never like dealt with this type of thing. So how do you even explain to people a world order ending or a reality ending? You can't. That's why you see a lot of people ignoring it because it's the only thing that makes it okay. Cognitive dissonance. You're seeing it everywhere. And that's kind of how people, in my opinion, live through the U.S. just in general. That's kind of why we're here because, look at this is the monster we've created. So, yeah, like I said, I think a lot of white Americans, like young white males are very susceptible to this because they're naive and obviously still don't understand privatization, don't understand corporations control the government. Not that the government does not control anything in America. I tell people this all the time. They don't. It's the private sector. There's a reason why the government will take over institutions, blow them up, say it sucks, and then they'll throw it into the private sector. That's the whole point. The whole point is to throw public institutions into the private sector so they can make money off of it. It's like common sense. And I always find it funny when you see liberals, specifically the ones that are like supposedly anti-racist, all this, especially white liberals, because it's always prominent. They're talking about, oh, this violence shouldn't happen. And we got to ask ourselves why. It's because they're not really about it. They're not really about helping indigenous people, black people, non-white people being free. What they're trying to do is calm you down so they can keep stealing. And hope to God that you never figure it out. And then that's what they did to our nanas, our moms, our tia, all everybody, bro. That's what they've done to all of us, and that's what they're trying to do to us now. So the temperature's a little too hot. They want to cool it down, because obviously Charlie Kirk dying is just, that looks like them. It looks just like them, and it's very similar to when that CEO got shot. You saw white liberals like celebrating it, and then obviously Rodney Hilton shot that police officer after one of their police officers killed I believe they killed his son. A lot of white liberals were like, that's not okay, because it's pretty easy to find a cop. It's very hard to find a CEO. So, like, we have to understand, like, the temperatures are just a little too hot for a lot of people. And liberation, people in this country are lazy as fuck when it comes to liberation. What they're trying to do, especially quash, like, non-white communities and, like, indigenous people, and black people, obviously, is that they're trying to do the least amount of work and get away with the most, without actually changing the system. That's why they're reformists. And that's why I always say, like, if white people want to actually change, they're going to have to realize they're European settlers, and they're going to have to join our organizations and join our leadership, instead of you telling us what to do, how to think, how to feel, what is good, what is bad. Because historically, that's what you've done. Your job is to fix your communities, not boss us around. And that's the end of colonialism. Like, this cannot keep happening. And that's why, like, I don't know if you guys have it in you. Straight up. Do you have it in you? You tell me.
Explain that is, why do we have this phenomenon of cop cities all of a sudden? I would argue that the only way you can explain that is the fact that the ruling elements recognize that this crisis is irreconcilable. It cannot be solved through natural reform. And that basically that the people in this country, the people who occupy spaces of national importance or strategic importance in these urban areas, they have to be controlled and contained. And it means you have to strengthen the repressive apparatus. You have to strengthen the ability and the skills of these police forces. And that's what we have with this cop city phenomenon. That's one aspect of it we have to deal with. The other aspect of the militarization is this national police force called ICE. That is, again, being used not just to identify what Trump talked about, the worst of the so-called immigrants or migrants. They're being used to basically satisfy the bloodthirsty desires of some elements of his base. The otherness, again, of these non-European elements, these vulnerable elements that can now be misused and used as political symbols. So they go into schools and picking people up. They're raiding outside Home Depots and going to the fields and harassing people. So these are two elements of this manifestation of militarism. What do we do in response? We got to have a fight back. We are building and advocating for building community self-defense coalitions that combine both the black folks, African Americans, Africans, if you will, and Latinos who are being terrorized in their houses, who are being terrorized every day. We need to build new kinds of coalitions against this kind of madness, okay? And so there's going to be a fight back, and there is a fight back. We're not going to allow Trump or any other force to intimidate us into passivity.
So obviously, in times of crisis, it's important for people to be together and united, because, like, I've always, like, just like in tough times, like, that is really what defines you. Because when everything's going all good and dandy, it's easy to be like, yeah, this is it. But America's not a united country. Like I said, it's built on settler colonialism. So everyone's like, a lot of people have different ideas of what America means to them. For example, a lot of people still think this is like a melting pot, and America is just a great country for settlers, and we're all just this one different, diverse group, etc., etc. However, I always tell people that you're getting indoctrinated, or like you're growing up to be raised like a rich white man with their values. And what do rich white men want? Capitalism, settler patriotism. They want us to be okay with conquest so we can make them more rich. We also have to understand that class collaboration between like white people and the rich people has been happening since the founding of the United States. George Washington and all those slave owners who had money couldn't take over this country alone. They promised like the working class poor white people that they too would be slave owners one day. And you see that directly today, how capitalism works, is that you could be a business owner. You could be the rich person today, instead of just obviously siding with the indigenous people. So class collaboration between rich people and white people has always happened. And obviously, when this like destabilizes, this is what they call fascism. It's violence against white people instead of violence against like black and indigenous people, like it's always been. So obviously, colonialism and fascism are the same thing, but the two terms separate each other based on who they're oppressing. So yeah, class collaboration between working class white people and rich people have always been happening. People are gonna have to figure out how we got here in order to, fix the future. You have to understand why we're here.
Bullshit! I've never been so pissed in my whole life. And this murder Charlie Kirk right here in Utah. I'm so freaking pissed right now. This is bullshit. I just saw blood squirting out of his neck. I love that guy. He would have been our next president. I am so pissed right now. Why do they always come with fucking violence? God!
Studied your history, and you did not take over this country by singing "We Shall Overcome." You did not gain control of the world like you have it now by dealing fairly with a man and keeping your word. You're treaty breakers, you're liars, you're thieves, you rape entire continents and races of people. Then you wonder why these very people don't have any confidence or trust in you. Your religion means nothing. Your law is a farce, and we see it every day. You demonstrated it in Alabama. And I can say you because you're part of the whole system. You profit from it. In fact, you make your living from it. You couldn't walk around and talk to people, stand up in your pulpit on Sunday and preach nice little songs and say, now we're going to give thanks to the Lord for he is good and old Jesus be among us. As far as we're concerned, your Jesus is contaminated, just like everything else you tried to force upon us is contaminated. Well, so you can have him. And here's what I'll say. I wish you would follow Jesus like we followed him. Because if you did that, then we'd be in charge tomorrow.
I think some of the biggest mistakes that black and brown people make in the U.S. is not forging connections outside the U.S. There's a reason why the U.S. wants to isolate black and brown people in the U.S. to just this colony. Because they don't want us to realize that we're the majority outside of the world, that the majority of the world agrees with us. As far as like communal values, running an economy that's not off privatization, running economies that are for everybody instead of just a few, all the greed, all the bullshit. Like, yeah, those are European values. Like, this economy, how the world is ran right now, is a European world. That's what they built. I mean, that's just the truth. So, yeah, with the U.S. world order coming to an end as far as, like, transitioning from a unipolar world, because after the fall of the Soviet Union, it was a unipolar world. The U.S. controlled it, and then obviously destroyed it in, 30, 40 years? That's all they ran it. So, yeah, I mean, most of us have lived in a world where the U.S. has controlled it. And obviously we don't understand or want to understand that the world is changing, transitioning from a unipolar world to a multipolar world. With that being said, black and brown people need to start understanding how supply chains work and start understanding that we can start going to international institutions that are going to be forged because of the U.S. world order coming down, that stop settler colonialism, stop racism. The world outside the U.S., like in the Western Europe and America, they hate racism. Probably more than us. Yeah, definitely more than us. So, yeah, I think we need to start understanding that there's a whole new world that is being forged out there, and we need to start with, going to international institutions saying, hey, they don't treat us right, don't trade with them. Don't give them uranium for nuclear weapons. Don't give them material that can be used to hurt us. So, yeah, I mean, we got to start thinking, outside the box and start thinking bigger than what we have. Because right now we're asking for reforms. All we're doing is asking for white people to please see our humanity, please, please, please. I mean, that's what we're doing. They don't care. I mean, that's the truth. Even white people will tell you they don't care. Like, that's just the truth. That's unfortunate. But we have to understand that there's a whole new world. There's new opportunities, new institutions that are going to be forged. We could start joining the world and start understanding that we're the majority. This is like the European colony that's in the U.S., or the U.S. European colony, is not like invincible. I don't understand why people always thought the U.S. was invincible. You're just people. You're just people. That's all you are. Like, you're not some god. Like, I don't understand. And people are stupid. And a lot of people don't understand that people in the U.S. are not trying to fix their problems. They're trying to make enough money to forget them. And that's...
They think only of the Negroes in the United States. But they don't realize that 2/3 of Brazil consists of people of African blood, which means they're also Afro-American, because Brazil is in South America. And in all of these, many of these countries in South America and Central America, and even in Canada, they are heavily populated with people whose ancestors came from Africa. So when you total up the number of Afro-Americans, real Afro-Americans, in the Western Hemisphere, there are perhaps 100 million. And if these people ever unite among themselves, not only is it necessary for the Afro-Americans in the United States to be organized, but it's also necessary for the Afro-Americans in the Caribbean, or the Afro-Cubans, the Afro-Brazilians. It's necessary for all of them to be organized. And then once they are organized in each place, we have to organize among ourselves so that the Afro-American in the United States will be working in conjunction in a coordinated program with those who are in Cuba, and those in Brazil, and those in Venezuela, and those throughout the Caribbean, and Haiti, and in the West Indian Islands. And in this way, we actually get strength. And it's not an accident that there's no organization existing in the Western Hemisphere that's designed toward that end. It would be a direct threat to imperialism as it really exists, and to colonialism as it exists in the world.
There's so much misunderstanding about BRICS and even the United States' dollar dominance that it actually misses the true objectives and fear that BRICS brings to the Western world, and specifically the United States. And it's not the fear of losing the US dollar. The United States dollar is unchallenged. There is no other currency that can replace the US dollar, nor does any other currency have the foundational principles that keep the dollar intact. A few of these are like the legal system when it comes to property rights. This also comes with the financialization of the United States market. This also goes with the fact that the United States dollar is not physically backed by anything except for hopes and dreams, which actually stabilize the world and the market as it is with US military prowess. I can go on and on to explain about the United States' dollar position, but let's talk about the real threat that BRICS offers to the Western world and the real threat that the United States is actively engaging in war to prevent. But first, we have to understand one of the geopolitical reasons as to why Putin made the decision to invade Ukraine. There's a myriad of reasons, but one of the primary reasons is the understanding and domination over resources. When we look at the Western world, they sit at what I will explain in this video to be at the top pillar of production, right? And to kind of explain this, Europe itself has an absolute wealth of people that are specialized in skilled labor, like absolute specialty. And then when we look at the United States, you see that the United States has one of the most pivotal points, which is Wall Street. And also, they also are highly specialized in specific areas of labor and also technology. But what is the thing that both of them depend on? They both depend on resources. So what Putin has come to as a strategy and what China has come to as a strategy, and then collectively BRICS as a whole, is that they're not going to compete with Europe. They're not going to compete with the United States when it comes to specialization, because even Chinese students get sent to America so that they can actually be educated by these specialized individuals within institutions and universities, and the same applies for Europe. Instead, they want to dominate resources, because it doesn't matter how specialized the US is. It doesn't matter how specialized Europe is. If you don't have the inputs and resources to maintain this dominance, you are doomed. And when you look at BRICS' growth, the thing you see is the quantity, the percentage of how much they dominate resources across the planet. That is China's ambition. That is Russia's ambition. If they continue to control resources, the basic things that are needed, then that means they have a piece of leverage. They don't have leverage in the financial markets. They don't have leverage in the technology markets, but instead they can have leverage in inputs. And they also have leverage in human labor. The quantity of human beings on this planet, the majority sits in BRICS. So BRICS is not challenging the US dollar. BRICS is not challenging the world financial systems. BRICS is challenging the United States at its most crucial inputs of resources.
A couple ways the news controls people is obviously social media is an easy one. Before I even liked anything, they were feeding me stupid shit like Andrew Tate and Ben Shapiro and who's this other racist dude? Jordan Peterson. People like that. They'll feed you these racist people to funnel you into alt-right or right-wing propaganda spaces because this is a right-wing country. And if you don't understand that liberals are still center-right in the grand scheme of national politics, then you clearly don't know about politics. And you need to do better. But social media algorithms and shit, that's an easy one as far as that's how people can destabilize a country. I mean, there's a reason why China and all these other countries don't allow Google and Facebook and all these stuff, because it's a tool. Hustle culture videos. You see people, the gender battles all the time. Oh, women this, men that, women this, men that. That doesn't mean there's not a patriarchy. There is. But some people are doing the job of the CIA for free. With this whole gender battles. They want you split apart because it's a working class that's split apart is easier to exploit. Apes together strong. This is not a hard concept. What else? The news. The news is easy. So the U.S. will sanction a country. Then it'll use the white savior complex saying, we need to go help those people. Then the U.S. will install a puppet government. That puppet government will privatize a bunch of public sectors of their economy. And then obviously poverty will skyrocket and the rich people in that country get more quote unquote, they'll get more rich. And the gap between the rich and poor will grow more wide in that country. Then the U.S. here will be like, look at those brown people. They can't govern themselves because we're the only ones. This is so fucking racist. And the fact that people can't even see this thing and then how they play into the white savior complex. Don't even get me started on church. God will handle it. God will take care of it. Bro, God wants you to handle it. You have to handle it. You're not supposed to just let bad things happen. That was my interpretation of God. And I don't know what other people's interpretation of God. That's why I'm not a Catholic anymore. I'm not a Christian. I'm not a Catholic. And this doesn't mean all Christianity and all these religions are the same. Because we're talking about Western religion. Western religion was used to colonize people. There's no coincidence that Mexicans worship a white Jesus and Catholicism and still speak Spanish from Spain. You're a brown person speaking Spanish from Spain. You gotta make this distinction about who you really are.
Okay, part 5, we're getting into the tech bros. I'm going to do my best to just kind of Cliff Notes version this next section of this deep dive because I fear the synapses in my brain will stop firing if I talk too much about tech bros. 1999, Zip2 gets sold. Elon Musk becomes a millionaire. Kimball Musk goes and does his thing. Elon stays in Silicon Valley to keep building into the tech world. This is when Elon Musk would create the website X.com. Not X, the social media app. And no one in this world is going to convince me that Elon's love of the letter X does not come from his technocratic beliefs, in which it was very common for them to replace their names with numbers and the letter X.
You describe yourself as a technologist.
Yes, exactly. Technologist. Make new technologies. Create new technologies.
No. Is it your dream to conquer the world, to make the world a better place? What is your dream?
Technology is like magic, I think technology is the closest thing to magic that we have in the real world. What's the closest thing to being a wizard in the real world? And that's creating new technologies.
Using the millions of dollars that he made from selling Zip2, he then turned that money into X.com. And X.com, it was just an online banking website where you could make money transfers via the internet. Within about 2 months of Elon launching X.com, the website had about 200,000 active members. While Elon Musk was the founder of X.com, he did rely very heavily upon investors to get X.com off the ground. But those investors did not think that Elon Musk had the experience to be the CEO of such a quickly growing banking website at his age with his lack of experience. This is when the investors would get together and oust Elon as the CEO of X.com and replace him with the Intuit software CEO, Bill Harris. Elon was still a board member and still had a great deal of power within X.com, despite not being the CEO. The following year, after Elon was removed as the CEO of X.com, would merge with a similar money transfer website called Confinity. And Confinity was co-founded by Peter Thiel in 1998. After this merger between Confinity and X.com occurred, PayPal was born. After this merger, Elon was named the CEO of PayPal, but that did not last long as issues between founders, investors, and employees all began to arise, primarily centered around Elon. Elon and Peter Thiel had such a tumultuous working relationship that it caused PayPal board members to oust Elon Musk as CEO, and they replaced him with Peter Thiel. Elon was still a founder working within PayPal, but he was not the CEO anymore. 2 years after Peter Thiel became the CEO of PayPal, PayPal would be sold to eBay and it would become eBay's primary transaction tool. So now I'm not going to get into the entirety of the PayPal mafia because we are going to be here all day if we did that. But I do want to talk about a few members of the PayPal mafia and where you can find them today and why it's relevant. Since we're already talking about him, let's start with Peter Thiel. So Peter Thiel was born in Germany in 1967 and was the son of a chemical engineer. When Peter Thiel was a little boy, his family would immigrate from Germany to apartheid South Africa. What is going on? Apartheid South Africa is where Peter Thiel would spend a large deal of his childhood. Peter Thiel's father, a German chemical engineer, ran uranium mining operations for the apartheid regime in South Africa. I think I've seen this movie before. Illegal mining operations, benefiting from apartheid. And these illegal mining operations would take place for years and just be completely devastating to the indigenous people of South Africa. And the whole reason that the apartheid regime was forcing these indigenous people to mine for uranium was so that they could collect it and create nuclear weapons with it. As an adult, after growing up in apartheid South Africa on the side of the oppression, Peter now describes his feelings towards apartheid as a good and valuable system that creates strong economies. I won't bore you with all the details of Peter Thiel's childhood because who fucking cares, right? I'm really just trying to wake up your guys' pattern recognition right now, okay? Just trying to wake it up. Peter Thiel also owns multiple other companies and hedge funds, and Peter Thiel is also an author, and he wrote a very interesting book back in 1995 alongside another tech bro named David Sachs. Go to part 6 because this book that David Sachs and Peter Thiel published is so revealing, it's terrifying. 6. So this book, written by Peter Thiel and David Sachs, is the definition of an accidental expose if I've ever seen one, and it literally reveals the inner workings of the mind of a Silicon Valley tech bro. This book that was written by David Sachs and Peter Thiel, and I'll get more into David Sachs here in just a second. I'm sure you've heard the name before. We'll talk more about it. We're gonna wake our pattern recognition up even more. But this book quite literally argues against affirmative action in the United States. That's the point of the book. And for anyone who is not aware of what affirmative action is, it is like this thin blanket of protection that the United States has granted to Americans so that they are not allowed to be discriminated against in school or in their workplace for whatever race they are, however they identify, whatever their disabilities are. It's really just diversity, equality, and inclusion. Like that, it's really like not controversial. And keep in mind, we have seen Elon Musk publicly talk about how he does not agree with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Kimball Musk closed down the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee when problems arose that he was gonna have to deal with. The Silicon Valley tech bros see affirmative action and DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, as an attack on them for whatever reason. There's a reason, but they can't say it out loud. You have to read between the lines with these people. Peter Thiel's hate for diversity, equity, inclusion is so ironic because Peter Thiel is an openly gay man. He is openly part of the LGBTQ community. Okay, I'm very quickly interrupting myself with a voiceover so that I can just be a tiny, tiny bit messy. Can I just point out the irony in the fact that not only is Peter Thiel an openly gay man, he is also a father. And what party that he's attached to, associated with, wants to take away the right of gay couples from being able to adopt children? You know, that same party that has been screaming at us to practice conservative family values. All the while, Peter Thiel, who is married to his partner, was in a long-term relationship, cheating on his partner with a social media influencer who is 22 years younger than him. And not only to mention that, it has also been well reported that at a New Year's Eve party at Peter Thiel's home, there was a confrontation between Peter Thiel's husband and Peter Thiel's boyfriend at said New Year's Eve party. And the outcome of that was the influencer, the much younger influencer who was dating Peter Thiel, ultimately ended up taking his own life. Peter Thiel is literally a menace within his own community. If he was not privileged the way that he is, diversity, equity, and inclusion would matter a lot to him. Peter Thiel is also one of the largest donors to the Republican campaign political party as a whole. Like, that man has deep pockets for conservatives. And it's really strange because, Peter Thiel, have you heard other talking about y'all? I want to talk more about this book, but let me introduce you to David Sacks if you are not familiar with who he is. So David Sacks went to school with Peter Thiel at Stanford University. That's how they got connected, and that's how they became, you know, book buddies. And you've probably heard David Sacks in the news recently because he's part of the incoming president's new cabinet. He's assuming the position of White House AI and crypto czar. Literally don't have a clue what that job entails. Here is where we're gonna wake up our pattern recognition again. Can anyone tell me where David Sacks was born? Take a wild guess. Just a wild guess? Yeah. Apartheid South Africa. Just like Elon Musk, just like Peter Thiel, David Sacks was also beneficiary of apartheid. What is going on? All of like these apartheid oppressor babies have grown up and are now trying to run the United States. What is going on? Do you guys all have the same brainworm? What is going on? Anyway, back to the book. So Peter and David basically argue in this book that implementing affirmative action in 1961 was a harm to the United States as a whole. They basically make the argument that Stanford University would be a much more prestigious university if they did not implement affirmative action, and that if universities would stop prioritizing meeting their DEI quota, that we would be much further as a society. Let me translate that for you from the tech bro language, right? They are simply saying, we do not want to see people of different orientations, of different identities, of different races in the same spaces as us. We don't want them to have equal opportunity. That is all that they are trying to say. They can put thousands of words on a piece of paper. It doesn't matter. That's exactly what they're trying to say. They're just trying to go about it in a very roundabout way to try to make you feel inferior for not understanding the way they think. Let me just read you a short excerpt from this book so you can kind of get a feel of where Peter and David were coming from. A Stanford without affirmative action will be a Stanford in which the question of who belongs here will no longer need to be answered. It will no longer need to be answered because it will no longer needed to be asked. In this book, Peter Thiel and David Sacks also throw around a very, very false and dangerous theory that the real number of SA and R words that happen on college campuses are massively conflated, and they quite literally chalk up the high rates of SA and R word on college campuses to confused and intoxicated women. I am personally shocked that David Sacks and Peter Thiel have not tried to destroy every copy of this book in existence, but at the same time, If they believed that their ideology surrounding diversity, equity, inclusion, and predatory behavior was controversial, they would have, and they have not. So that says something. Probably because of his highly controversial ideology, his money, all of those things made him very palatable for Donald Trump. And in 2016, Peter Thiel donated over $1 million to Donald Trump's campaign. And Peter Thiel was also on the executive committee of Donald Trump's transition team in his first term. Just a couple other things about Peter Thiel, and then we will get back into how all this ties into Elon Musk. Peter Thiel was also one of the largest Republican donors to Republican congressional candidates, donating well over $20 million to boost Republican candidates into a Senate position. One of those Republican candidates was J.D. Vance, who was in that election named the Senator of Ohio, and then just 2 years later named the incoming Vice President of the United States. So when people say that Peter Thiel is J.D. Vance's daddy, that's why. Peter Thiel is also a major investor of AI, OpenAI, all of those things as well. In a nutshell, that's what you need to know about David Sachs and Peter Thiel for now. Go to part 7.
Has anyone else noticed the increasing amount of racism that's in TikTok comments now? This stuff is turning into freaking Twitter. This is turning into Elon Musk Twitter. Like, it's to a point where I don't even click on the comments on certain videos because I know exactly what I'm about to see. Like, you can't go into a dang comment section without there being casual freaking racism in there. And no violations take place. But if I freaking say ew in the dang comment section, I'm getting a violation. Like, be serious.